concept, good education. We have to talk about it, we have to learn about it, and it can be different for a lot of people. So analyzing the learning context, is the environment, is there a proactive environment? Is there a preventive environment? Is there a powerful learning environment? Is diversity considered a strength or a problem? Are there a variety in methods, instruction, materials, assessment, or is it only one size fits all? Is there a use of reasonable accommodations? Are there adaptations made to materials or methods? Do you see mediation happening? Is this promoted, or is this installed in between children, between teacher and children? Does a teacher and team have professional attitudes and competences? Are they eager to learn, or are they so in their practice and in the urgency of the day and the school and the educational practice that there is no time for learning? And is the school organization, for example, in favor of support? Because we have to support children, to support teams, to support teachers. We need time. Where are we going to find the time to support in a proper way? So what is the starting point for support? And then we can say the starting point for support is that the inclusion of a student or child or pupil is in danger. When do we activate additional support? The learning and development of the pupil is in danger in that specific learning environment. So, in other words, the inclusion of the pupil is in danger. When we do nothing, there is a risk that the child will drop out, or that the child won't learn, or development will not go as smoothly as expected. So, what accommodations are needed? Then how do we evaluate interventions? And what about the knowledge about inclusive education? When inclusion and inclusive education is a starting point for the support, then we should all agree on the fact that we have to strive for inclusive education. And therefore we need knowledge. And one of the big gaps we noticed was that there's a big gap about the knowledge of inclusion and the policy of inclusion with the teachers, and that the people who have to realize inclusive education, that they often don't know what inclusive education can be, or so there's a little big gap of knowledge in the field of practice. And that's something that the support people saw. The support people who come into the school or in the classroom to work on inclusive education, that they have to explain inclusive education to the teachers, and they have to create the mind shift together towards more inclusion. So we come to two questions from the point of view of support. When you go to a classroom and support is needed, is this then a case of improving good education? Because nowadays in Flanders, we must say that 70% of our support people, they are improving good education. They are not working on support, specific support of a teacher or of a child, but they are supporting the teacher and the child by first improving what good education is. We still have teachers who don't differentiate in a proper way. We still have a lot of teachers who don't have the mind shift towards inclusive education. I mean, we have a lot of teachers who don't know how to organize their class management when they are working with diversity in the classroom. And we have a lot of teachers who are lacking the skills or insights to create learning for everyone. But when good education is there, and you noticed good education, then maybe it's just a case of additional support. It's about implementing new methods. It's about specific resources. It's about adaptations on the curriculum, or adaptations, learning materials, or to introduce new learning materials. So the starting point and the ending point of support is inclusive education. Considering that inclusive education is good education and good support. What is then support? How are we going to define support needs? I gave some examples earlier about good support. But the thing that is missing there is that support needs are contextual. They are interactional. Support needs from a child, so I'm not talking about special educational needs, I'm talking about support needs. Support needs from a child is a contextual concept. It's something that starts in interaction with the environment or with the teacher or with learning material. That's what disability is about. Disability is the result of interaction between individual and environmental characteristics. So support needs, when you define support needs, you define, in fact, an inclusive or an inclusion problem. So we need to define support needs in terms of inclusion, and not only in terms of the child, because when we define support needs only in terms of a child, we are still within this medical paradigm or within this disorder paradigm and not in an inclusive paradigm. So this contextual and interactional information should be part of defining the support needs. So the question is not only what is the support need of the child, but what is the support need of the child with this teacher? What is the support need of the teacher? What is the support need of the learning environment? And how are these connected? So we have characteristics of the child, of course, and we have characteristics of the learning environment. And these create barriers for learning and barriers for teaching. So, and we should consider them both. But then I go back to the people that support people that support children and teachers. Do they have the competences to analyze a learning environment in this way and to define support needs or to redefine support needs within this contextual framework? So support needs are an inclusion issue or a challenge towards inclusion. What are the barriers for learning and participation? It's a common sentence. What are the barriers for teacher and peers to engage with the pupil? These are at least even as important as the barriers for the child, because the child depends on the relation with the teacher and the child depends on the relation with the peers. And when they don't engage with the pupil, we are not working towards more inclusion. So we have to broaden the perspective, not what does the pupil or the child needs, we have to consider the context. What does the pupil, teacher, other pupils need in the specific context, in that school, in that classroom? So the learning and participation of that child, but also from other children are evolving. So we need to add contextual aspects, what works, how does learning becomes visible in this classroom, how is dealt with differences and diversity, how are children learned about dealing with differences and diversity, how can children participate in an equal way, and so on and so on. So supporting special needs is not the final goal. It seems maybe that it's the final goal for people who are working in additional support. But when support is asked for special needs, it's an invitation to create a better inclusive learning environment for all children. So not only for the child involved with the special needs, but for the whole environment. So the question is, how can, from support staff, additional support, how can we enrich the inclusive learning environment as a whole? Final, don't have much time anymore, I see 51, or final topic is support is about collaboration. How do we support? When we look at what support people do, we discovered 4 kinds of supports: guiding, coaching, cooperation, and learning. And I've put them here in a framework. Depending on the goal, if the goal is clear for both parties, for teacher and support teacher, or we can talk about guiding or cooperation. So the goal is clear and we know where to go. And to reach this goal, there is the need for expertise, or there is the need for partnership. Or the focus can be the process. The focus can be, has to be a process, because teachers are not ready yet. We have to take them in a mind shift. We have to take them with us in this kind of thinking, in this contextual process. And then maybe we should have more a coaching attitude as a support people, or we can start with a collaborative learning when we can go into a partnership. I will go very quickly through these 4 ways of support. So guiding is about the effective use of expertise. It's about, we know this child needs this kind of learning material, this kind of support. The goals are clear and transparent for everyone. We know we have to differentiate more. We know it's about special or adapting learning materials or tools or accommodations, and we can provide this, and the teacher knows how to work with it, and the support staff is helping or creating this kind of adaptations. Coaching is more sharing expertise in a process. And this means the goals are clear. We have to create more differentiation or more mediation and so on. But the goals for the teacher and the team are different than for what the support teacher or support staff thinks is necessary. So we have to coach our teachers and our team to enhance the learning environment. And we can do this by reflective learning, by introducing inclusive perspective on learning, by sharing information, bringing new knowledge about inclusive education and so on towards the school, towards the teacher and the team. We can cooperate as partners. This means building expertise in a cooperative way. This goals are clear and transparent for support and learning environments, but we don't know how to do. We don't know how to realize. For example, we have a child with some cognitive impairments, and we don't know yet how the child is learning, how we can get the learning potential visible. So we have to work to cooperate as partners, but can also cooperation with the student guidance centers and the parents. And how are we going to share experience so we have a better view on what's necessary and so on. So do we have to involve other experts? For example, a big issue in Flanders is, for example, behavior or adaptations at the curriculum, or children with complex support needs. And then we have the learning together, co-creation. That is that we don't know what to do. The goals are unclear. We don't know what the child has to learn. We are on an expedition together. We have to learn together as an environment how the child and how the environment can help the child in a learning process. It's about constructing new knowledge, new strategies, because the things we are doing are not helping. We have to find out something more. In earlier times, children should end up in special school, but now they can stay in mainstream school. So how are we going to work on that? How are we going to involve other experts? Then we have the concept of multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity, because we believe that support is gains by multidisciplinary expertise. And when we evolve to interdisciplinary support, I will explain these concepts. Here you see an overview of the concepts. Intra is just from one discipline. Multi is when you put several different disciplines around the table working together, each from their own disciplinary knowledge. Cross-disciplinary brings people more together, and interdisciplinary is about integrating knowledge and methods from different disciplines. And we believe from our research that support teams should evolve. They start from a multidisciplinary point of view, but they should evolve to an interdisciplinary point of view. Namely, they should integrate knowledge and methods in favor of inclusion from different. So the synthesis of approaches should end up in strengthen the inclusion of a child in the environment. Some questions we can have here is, what expertise do we have? What expertise do we have and miss around the table? How can we use our expertise not only for the learning needs for the child, but for inclusive education? So speech therapists who are specialized in activities and learning activities around speech and reading and so on. That's one thing, but how is he or she going to use his expertise to strengthen the inclusive environment around the child? So what is the position of experts towards inclusive education? How can we support inclusion from our own expertise, from our knowledge, identity, discipline? How do we create then interdisciplinary responses? These are questions we think are very urgent when you work in multidisciplinary teams and you want to work towards inclusion. So this is the framework, finally framework, additional support in inclusive education that we gained from our research. And the nice thing is that once we've gained this framework, now we went back to the networks and we are testing this framework. Is this something that's helpful to look at support and to organize talking about support, the support needs, to organize support together with, does this give enough language for support people to talk about their job, for example? So I'm at the end of my webinar. I don't know if there are ideas, questions, remarks, or maybe a joke. I will stop sharing. Here it is. So if you have questions, please feel free. It's a little bit different than the presentation from yesterday, but the presentation from yesterday was very practical and very into the classroom. Mine was more abstract, maybe more theoretical, or but in the end, practice will meet theory and theory will meet practice, of course. Was it all clear, or do you have special questions or other ideas? Is this recognizable for people? Is this applicable in other contexts? I'm looking at the chat now.
It's all clear.
It's all clear. Thank you. But if support becomes a bad support, Luana says. Luana, do you want to clarify the question, or?
Well, sometimes the people that comes as a support, they actually aren't supportive, but are going against teachers, and they think they do the best for the child, but it's not exactly the best because the teachers aren't agreeing with the support. I don't know how to explain, but because in our school it's happening, And I don't know how to solve that. So this is why I'm asking.
Thank you. Good question, because it's something we see, because our support model and support system is quite young. We only have it for 3 or 4 years, so it's quite young. And we see the same things. For example, we have support people that come to in a classroom and they see that the teacher is not welcoming support, for example. But we also see the other way around, that teachers, that the support teacher comes into the classroom and that the teacher says he or she is doing nothing. It's just in the back of the classroom, observing or only helping when it's quite necessary, and then they leave the classroom, for example. So in both ways, the main goal, and that's why I've put the main goal is inclusive education. The main goal is inclusion. And the teacher and the support teacher should agree on that. Is this our main goal? Because there is an unbalance. And like I said, we have a huge gap about the knowledge of inclusive education with our teachers. And our support people are not trained in inclusive education. They just came out from special education to help the mainstream schools. So there is an unbalance in knowledge, because the past 3 years, our support people have got a lot of training, a lot of information, and they jumped farther away now about their knowledge in inclusive education. But they come into environments and in concepts. But sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes the teacher knows more about inclusive education than the support people. And then they are looking at each other. who is going to do what is the one is going to do, what's the other one going to do? Because the teacher expects from the support teacher that he or she knows more about inclusive education, and so on. So you get an unbalance, and you have all these kind of different people meeting each other. But I think as a start for supports, we should talk about the main goal, and that is we are working together towards inclusive education for this child. What can I do as a teacher? What can you do as a support teacher? And how are we going to reach that goal? So but that's something that we should discuss in the beginning of support. And the sooner we notice that the sooner people discuss this with teachers, the support goes much easier. Because support teachers are always also seen as a threat sometimes for teachers. And so we have to find a collaborative environment there towards inclusion. But some things we should point out some things in the beginning of the support process. Do we agree on that the goal is inclusive education? Yes or no? Do we have the knowledge together? What information do we need before we start this process? And how are we going to work together on this process? And how are we going to experiment, explore, try, and so on? But it's an important first talk with the teacher. But I saw Morten and Xinjia also.
Yes, and after that, Senja, so we have some experience in Norway, and I will say that it's 2 lines of experts when we started this for 20 years ago. And that was the experts that was coming from the special schools, the governmental special schools. And it was also a rebuilding of education and psychology service. That was another group of experts that was helping the teachers. The main problem was the language, because the educational psychology service had their language maybe very close to the experts from the special schools, but the teacher did mainly use and did not really understand the language in the beginning. Slowly, the experts and the educational psychology service get more and more used to look at the inclusive education, and then they get more in contact with the teacher, and we can see that educational psychology service has been more people who is coming from school that are there, and so they understand each other in a little better way. So this is a way we did it in Norway, and now the government maybe in a few years will close down the experts, which they take from the special school, give them some sort of research money, the governmental system of support, but the government will maybe in a few years close that down and put more emphasis on the educational psychology service. And maybe that's a better one because they are closer to the schools and they are closer to the inclusive education system.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So can I add something?
Yes, you can.
Yes. So I want to answer and say my opinion to Luana, to her question, okay? So I think our goal should always be for each teacher in the classroom that we want to make as much as we can a better learning environment for all. This is our goal for all learners. So if we have children that have special needs and they have individualized plans and accommodations in them, we have to follow them. And by that, I mean only one thing. This is not a privilege. I stress it as much as I can. This is not a privilege. This is their right, because they learn it differently. They're not like others in the classroom. Others can follow without difficulties if they learn, of course, at home, if they do their homework and they listen to the teacher. But others who have special difficulties and they need individualized programs, they have difficulties because they are not like others, because they are not learning, they're not processing in the same way as others do. So we have to give them this right to give them things that are supported with their learning. Okay, this is my point of view. And I know many cases where teachers complain that special therapists or special educators give too much help, that they are not helping them at all, and they are always arguing with teachers and special educators. I know those cases, believe me, but I think we have to give these special children credit that they are allowed to be in the same program, that have the same goals, and they can do it because they are just like others. They want to learn, they want to explore the world, and they need our help. But when we give them our support, we have to empower them that they will live without our support later when they leave schools, you know? We have to give them the support they will be able to use without us. This is our goal. We want to enhance them. I have done it, okay? This is my point of view.
Thank you for your contribution. Luana.
Yeah, but sometimes the children are complaining, not the teachers, about the support.
What do they say?
Well, that it doesn't help, that it's not useful, that it makes them in a bad position. So it's not only the teachers, sometimes are the children that are like complaining about what is happening during the support.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about with the examples of good support. When I gave the examples of good support, these are examples, for example, from speech therapists or physiotherapists. They believe they are doing a good job to support these children. Remember the slide I showed with a good support question mark? But of course, children look at support in a different way. They find support often very excluding and very stigmatizing. I know examples of people who threw away their aids or their material because they just wanted to join the others in the same way, and they felt ashamed because they were the only ones with a computer, and everyone wanted to join them. And so the person who is receiving the support looks at support from a different perspective as something, and that's what I was something of the most important points I wanted to address, that support should always have this inclusive tendency in it. So, for example, can children work together when you have 3 or 4 computers in the classroom, not only one for the special child, but you have more computers, and can children work together? Then it's not that special anymore, but you can integrate this kind of things. When you have a physiotherapist during sports lessons, is the physiotherapist only working with the child, or is the physiotherapist working with some children together and playing? And has the physiotherapist thought about some exercises the child with a disability can do with other children, so they can connect and they can create the context? So, and this is looking at support from an inclusive point of view, not from an integration point of view or from a specialist point of view. But we need, of course, specialisms and this special knowledge, but we have to translate it towards the focus on inclusion, and we have to ask ourselves, is this support helping the child? Okay, but is this support helping the child in an inclusive way? Namely, does the child get connected with the peers? Does it get connected with the environment? Does it enriches the status of a child in a classroom? Does it makes talents visible from a child in the classroom, and so on? So, and then we can talk about support that's support and with an inclusive perspective. Otherwise, it's nothing more than supporting special needs. So this was a.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's a dimension I want to add to from our research, because we noticed that the support stopped by helping the child, and then the teacher was happy, parents were happy, and the support staff was happy. But there was much more to do with the support in the learning material. For example, the sign language interpreter who comes to the school, is he there only for the child with a disability or with the hearing impairment? Or can we use the sign language interpreter to give him a small group of children together with the child with deafness, so they can learn, a small group of children, to use some sign language, so the child can communicate in the classroom with some children, for example? So how are we going to use the support that the child with support needs brings in to the school? How are we going to use the support so there is connection and social improvement? Okay, I saw in the chat from Jo, one of our big barriers is the conception about education and learning. One of our fundamental problems is that schools often have an implicit competitive school model with targets to reach, a selection process accompanied by testing. Those who cannot comply drop out, whereas inclusion has a cooperative model or collaborative model. So sometimes it doesn't fit. Or the inclusion way of thinking doesn't fit the DNA or the history of a school environment. So we have to make a fitting connection there. And another question from Yo. Maybe Yo, are you there still? No, he has left.
Who, me?
Ah, there he is. Maybe about your last question
My question?
from Yo. Yo?
Oh, no, I'm Luana. No, sorry.
My question, the teacher as a stranger, the support teacher entering the classroom as a stranger, is that also in Italy and Portugal and in Norway, where there is a much more, I think, integrated model. I don't know. I would like to hear the colleagues from Portugal and Italy and Norway about that.
As I mentioned, Joe, sometimes it's experienced by teachers that the experts are a stranger into the classroom. But when we have made it closer and closer from educational psychology service closer to the school, and then it's not that problem, I say, anymore, because we have more and more teachers, expert teachers that are working in educational psychology service, and they are coming from the teachers area, and they really work with the inclusive education. So the problem is sometimes that the inclusive education is so highlighted that they try to maybe say something that problem is not a problem. And that's really difficult, because and they say if it's that big problem, then they have to go to health service. And we don't think that's a good idea. We think that it has been really good for Norway that we have handling this in the schools, also people with severe problems, even if they sometimes have their own group rooms and so on. So, but yes, sometimes it felt that the support teacher or the expert is a stranger in the classroom sometimes. Maybe Gunnar had something to add too.
We also have some very good examples of how school psychologists, for example, are exploring new methods and are really they can provide help for the children and for the youngsters. And I hope we can make it a possibility to let you meet some of these people during this project.
In Italy, the situation is that if the teacher is specialized, the experience is good for the general teachers and for the pupils. But if the teacher is not specialized as a support teacher, the support teacher is a stranger in the classroom. And also I think that it's very very important, the consideration of Professor Lieber about the climate in the school. Because when in the school there is a competitive climate, the situation for all pupils, for all children is better. Or when there is a collaborative situation, is very good for inclusive education. And it's important for me to put together medical model and the social model in the policy, practice, and cultural in the school. This is my idea. Thank you.
I would like to share something, if I may. Okay. So I as you already know, those who listened to me yesterday, I also teach in secondary school. I give them help. I go to them to pick them out of the class, and I took them to my office. So this is I think the stranger entering in the classroom is the right term for me also. But last year I had very nice experiences, though I'm stranger there, though I'm not employed there because I'm coming from my school to their school. I had 4 students in the same class, 4 girls, that they were bullied for 3 years. And last year were their last year in that school. Because they were bullied so much, I decided that I will do something for the class they are in. And I gave the whole class a lecture about how we learn best. And they were very happy and thankful for this experience because I showed them that I'm not there just for children with special needs, that I'm also there for them, for those who need an advice in learning and so on. It was really great experience.